Hello everyone, welcome to Primus Learning. If you're new here, I'm Aziz, and today we are going to be discussing about the hands-on section for AWS S3. First, we are going to look at how to create an S3 bucket and how to upload objects into our S3 bucket. Then we are going to discuss about AWS S3, enabling public access and how to set up bucket policies. Then we'll look at bucket versioning, and then we will look at AWS S3 static web hosting and cross-region replication. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and begin. So I'm currently on my AWS dashboard. So to navigate to S3, so you want to just go up to the search bar and then we search for S3. Then we're going to open S3. And you can see that here we don't have any S3 bucket, nothing yet, it's empty. So, and these are the various options that you can use when you have S3. So you can go ahead and click on buckets here, or you can click on create bucket directly from here. But I'm just going to click on buckets. You can see currently we have no buckets available in this account. So let's go ahead and do create bucket. So I'm going to leave it as general purpose, and then I'm just going to provide a bucket name. So I'm going to call it Primus Learning YouTube Demo 2024, and then up, let's correct that. I'm going to leave object ownership as default. Access control list recommended to be disabled, as we discussed in the previous lecture, that AWS recommends that we disable access control list and we use bucket policies to control the access at the level of our S3 bucket and its objects. So this is good. And then down, we want to leave this as here as selected by default. The block all public access should be there, enabled by default. By default, all public access is going to be blocked. So that is good. Bucket versioning by default is going to be disabled, so we're keeping it this way up. And the only thing you want to do is to go ahead and click on create bucket. So we have created our S3 bucket. Now let's go ahead and open the S3 bucket. So I can just click on the bucket name to open it. So that is it. That is how to create an S3 bucket. So let's look at how to upload our objects into our S3 bucket. So to upload an object, you can either click on upload when here is the empty, or you can click on upload this other way. So I'm just going to go ahead and do upload. And then after you click on upload, you want to go ahead and do add files. So add files, and then you can select the file that you want to add. So I'm just going to select any file from here up like that, and that is done. And then to upload, you just click on upload. So that is it. Our object has been uploaded. So you can see once you upload your object, once you upload your file or your image or your video into your S3 bucket, now in AWS S3 terminology, this is what you call an object. So S3 recognizes this as an object. So you can go ahead and click on the file if you want to look at, if you want to get more properties about the file, more information about the particular file, the object. So you click on it up, and you can see this is the object overview. This is all the information, and you can see here you have the object URL, you have the Amazon resource name. So whenever we create resources in AWS, all resources in AWS have what we call AWS ARN, right? And ARN is an Amazon resource name. It's just basically a unique name that is used to identify a particular resource in AWS. Then you also have the object URL here, and you can be able to copy this object URL, and then you go to your browser, and if you try to access this object, you're going to receive access denied. That is because, remember what we discussed last time, whenever you create an object, whenever you have an S3 bucket and you have object inside your S3 bucket, by default when you create this bucket is going to be private, okay, because the block, as we saw that the block public access was already was enabled. And then you have your object in your bucket, so which means that you cannot be able to access this particular object at this moment because it's private. So let's next you want to look at how do you make your AWS S3 bucket How do you make your S3 bucket have public access? How do you enable the public access? So to do that, let's go back to S3, and here you can see the permissions of this object. You can see the versions of this object. For now, we have not enabled bucket versioning. That is why you see here there are no versions. So let's head back to S3. So whenever you open an S3 bucket, for example, if you go back to buckets and we open this bucket, you see here, you can see the various properties of the S3 bucket. These are the properties of the bucket. And when you open an object, you can see the properties of the object. So whenever you want to do a configuration at the level of the bucket, you have them here. So if you go to properties, here you can do the various configurations of the object when it comes to enabling bucket versioning. If you want to configure intelligent tiering, server access login, CloudTrail access event notifications. So static web hosting as well, you can enable it from here. That is what you have when it comes to properties. Then you have permissions. This is where you control everything that has to do with permissions, access level, and bucket policies. You have that at the level of permissions. Then you have the matrices you can be able to collect from your S3 bucket. And then you have S3 management and access points. So what we want to do is first we need to disable the block public access up. So to do this, we just click on edit and then that, and then save changes. So you can see turning these settings on this same turning this setting on is the same as turning on all 4 settings below. Each of the following settings are independent. So we click on save changes to make bucket public, and then we need to type confirm. Once that is done, now our bucket now is public. And now once our bucket is public, it doesn't mean that our objects can already automatically be accessed from the public internet. If you go ahead and you refresh again on this particular object, you will see that it is still private. So whenever you make your bucket public, then now you can now start controlling the access now at the level of your object. And to be able to make now the object itself public, now you need to use what we call AWS S3 bucket policies. So last time we saw how to create IAM policies. Object policies are not different from IAM policies, not really different. But let's go ahead and see how to create a bucket policy. So to easily create a bucket policy, let's go ahead and navigate to AWS Policy Generator. As usual, I'm searching for AWS Policy Generator. And then I'll click on AWS Policy Generator. And what you want to go ahead and do is select S3 bucket policy, select. And what you want to do is to allow the principal here. The principal here means either the AWS account or the user that you want this particular bucket policy to be applied to. And for us, since we want this policy to be applied to every other identity or every other principal, we can just go ahead and put asterisk. So the service is already S3 by default, because remember it's a bucket policy, so the service automatically becomes S3. And now the actions you want to give. If you want to give just a particular action, you can go ahead and select that. But for us, we're just going to go with all actions. And then now for the Amazon resource name, remember you're inside an S3 bucket. So what you want to do is first let's go to the bucket properties, and here you have the ARN of the bucket. So now what we really want is to be able to give public access to the objects in this bucket, but this is the Amazon resource name of this particular bucket. So if you want to give that bucket the access to the objects in this bucket, as you can see, you need to put a slash, and then maybe you can put, for example, asterisk. Or if you want to, if you want this policy to apply just to a particular object, you can give the whole bucket, the whole object name, maybe image.png, like that. Or if you want it to apply just to a particular folder in your S3 bucket, you can go ahead. Maybe if the folder name is images, you can just do images, like that. But if you want it to apply to all the objects in your bucket, you can just put slash and then asterisk. So it means that all the Amazon resource names in my bucket, the slash asterisk is going to apply to all the various objects in your S3 bucket. So once you do that, you want to go ahead and click on add statement, and then click on generate policy. And then you want to copy this up, copy back to S3. And now let's go back to permissions. And here we need to provide our bucket policy. So I'm doing on edit, and then here I'm going to paste our bucket policy. So what we are doing, we want to allow S3 access on all actions, and is for all the various resources in our S3 bucket. That is why we have the bucket ARN/*. And like I said, if it were a particular object, then you need to provide /the object name. And if you wanted to apply this to a particular folder, which in AWS S3 is called a key, then you can basically just put the folder name, and then the principal is *, which means this policy is going to be applicable to all the principals, all the users, all the AWS accounts, and everyone that wants to have access to this particular object publicly. So after we do that, let's go ahead and click on Save Changes. And now that we have saved the changes, let's head back to the URL where we pasted this, and then we can refresh. And now we have access to our S3 object because now it is publicly accessible. So this is how you enable public access when it comes to S3 buckets, and this is how you generate a bucket policy. You can easily do that by using AWS Policy Generator if you are not very versed with JSON. So next, we want to look at how to enable bucket versioning. So to enable bucket versioning, let's go ahead and move to properties. If you go to properties, under properties, you're going to see a bucket versioning. So let's go ahead and click on edit, and then we can click on enable. And one thing you need to know is that once you enable bucket versioning, you can no longer disable bucket versioning, you can just suspend it. So after enabling bucket versioning, you might need to update your lifecycle rules to manage previous versions of the object. So when you enable bucket versioning, you need to remember you can no longer be able to disable bucket versioning after it has been enabled. So as you have bucket versioning enabled, let's go ahead and click on Save Changes. So once we have versioning enabled, let's go back to our objects, and now here we're going to see Show Versions. If you click on Show Versions, you can see nothing yet, and you can see version ID is equal to null. The reason why version ID is equal to null is because this object was uploaded before versioning was enabled. So now let's go ahead and re-upload again this same object and see what is going to happen. So I'm clicking on upload. Let's add the file. I'm selecting the file. Open. Upload. And then we can close this tab. And then let's go ahead and toggle on the show versions. You can see what happened now. Now we have two versions. You have the current version, which is this one we just uploaded, that has a version ID. You can see this one has a version ID, but this one is null because this one was uploaded before versioning was enabled. So this is what AWS S3 bucket versioning is all about. So say for example, let's go ahead and delete this particular version of the object. So we can go ahead and click on delete. I'm going to go back. Let's untoggle the bucket versioning. Let's click on delete. Let's click on delete. And click on delete. And up. Let's close. So now we have deleted the object, right? And if you refresh, now you have no object. But if you go ahead and click on show versions, you see the object still exists. When you click on show versions, you see the object still exists. So which means that with AWS bucket versioning, we can still be able to restore our object. So how are you going to be able to restore your object? What you need to do is just to remove the delete marker. So let's go ahead and delete the delete marker. So we can select the delete marker, and we click on delete, and then we click on permanently delete. So I'm just going to copy this up. And then you can go ahead and close. And now we are back. You have restored your AWS S3 object by removing the delete marker. So that is how you restore your AWS S3 objects, by removing your delete markers. So That is how bucket versioning is all about. It helps us to be able to recover from disasters and also from unintended delete. That is what bucket versioning is all about. Now we can go ahead and look at AWS S3 static web hosting. And like we said, static web hosting is a feature of AWS S3 that we can use to host our static applications. So how can we test this? First, I want to go back to buckets. Let's go ahead and create a new bucket. So let's create a new bucket. I want to call it Primus Learning. .website, like that. So by default, I'm not going to enable anything. I leave everything as default. Create bucket. And now we have created this bucket. Let's go ahead and open it. And let's enable static web hosting. So we are going to enable static web hosting by going to properties. And then we'll scroll down. And down you have edit. You have static web hosting. And then edit. And enable static web hosting. So host a static website. So here you need to provide the index document, because when developers are writing static website, you always have what we call the index document, and usually most of the time is going to be called index.html. Most often is going to be called index.html. So we are calling it index.html. Same for the error document, which is usually like error.html. I'll just call it also index.html, and then I'm going to save changes. And we don't have this object called index.html available. So let's go ahead and create an object called index.html and then upload it, and it's going to have our static website. So to do this, I'm going to do something. I'm going to create a file. I'm going to create a file in my documents folder that is going to be called, let's go down to documents, and we are going to do create folder. Let's open the folder, and what we want to do here, I'm going to open this folder in my code editor like VS Code. So I'm opening up the folder up. Okay. So here we have the folder. What I want to do is to go ahead and add an index.html document. And then let's go ahead and add a basic HTML5 schema. And then we can just see paragraph. Here we can just see paragraph. And then we see paragraph is equal to hello YouTube. And then we can see H1 up. Thank you for subscribing. Okay, up. And then what else? I think that is good. So let's go ahead and upload our index.html document into our S3 bucket. So it's already saved up. Let's upload. Add files, and then I'm heading to documents, open, and then I want to select the document, and upload. And then let's close. And now we have uploaded our index.html document. Now, if we try to access our website, how can we be able to access this website? Let's go ahead. Let's head back to properties and scroll down to the bucket static web hosting section. And now we have here, when you configure your bucket as static website, the website is available at the AWS region specific website endpoint of this bucket. So you have this, and you can click on this link to access the website. But now if you try to access this website, you remember that it's going to say forbidden access denied because our bucket is not publicly accessible. So what do? We need to also provide a bucket policy like this one, that is going to make it publicly accessible. So I'm copying this same bucket policy that we created. I'm going back to this website, to this bucket. Sorry, you go to permissions, and let's go down to bucket policy, edit bucket policy, and then up. What we want to do is simply just to change this bucket ARN to this new bucket. So I change this, and that is done. And then save changes. Oh, sorry. So first we forgot to enable public to remove the block public access. So first you need to remove this, because you cannot make an object public if the bucket is still private. So you need to do this first, confirm. And then now back to bucket policy. Let's go back, copy. Let's get the ARN. And then let's save changes. And that is it. So let's go back and refresh. And now we have hello YouTube, and thank you for subscribing. So that is how to host static websites when it comes to AWS S3. So now that we have seen how to do S3 static web hosting, let's go ahead and look at S3 cross-region replication. What exactly is cross-region replication? So cross-region replication is used when you have objects that are in another region and you want to replicate them in another region. Maybe because you're preparing for a disaster, or for whatever reason, you can be able to do cross-region replication. So let's go ahead and create a bucket. Let's go ahead and create another bucket. So I'm going to switch the region. So I want to switch the region because currently I already have this bucket in US East 1. What we want to do is to switch the region to maybe let's switch to Ohio, US East 2, and create a bucket in US East 2. So I'm switching the region and click on create bucket. And now you can see the region is Ohio, US East 2. So I want to create demo.cross region Primus Learning up YouTube. And then that is it. What I want to do, create bucket. And then we want to open this we want to be replicating objects that are found inside this Primus Learning YouTube demo website into this new bucket. So we want to do the replication between this bucket and this bucket. So anytime we upload a new object into this bucket, automatically is going to be replicated in the second bucket. So let's go ahead and open this. And then we're going back to bucket management. So we want to create a replication rule, create replication rule. So to create replication rule, first we need to enable bucket versioning. So you can just go ahead and click enable versioning up here, enable versioning. So you want to call it, I'll just call it US East 1 to US East 2 replication. The status is going to be enabled. So I want to apply to all the objects in this bucket. Apply. Now you need to choose the destination bucket, right? So you want to choose the destination bucket. You can just go ahead and click on browse S3. And then you choose the bucket. The bucket you want to choose is this one. And then I choose path. And in the bucket where you want to also do the replication, you need to enable versioning. So I can click on enable versioning to enable it like that. And then you don't really need an IAM role as per se to be able to do you can choose to be able for another bucket to be able to do the replication into another bucket. You need the one of the buckets to have access to to have access to be able to do the cross region replication for you, but you can just go ahead and click on create new role, so that AWS S3 is going to automatically create the role for you and then use it to be able to do the replication. So let's go down. Encryption, we don't really need to do encryption for now, and destination storage class is going to be default, and that is it. Let's go ahead and save changes. So if you want to replicate the existing object, you can go ahead and click on replicate existing objects. Yes, that is what I want to do. I just click on replicate existing objects and then submit, and then save changes. You choose to create an IAM row as we did, and then no other configurations. Completion report destination up. You can just go ahead and save. Let's use the same S3 bucket for the completion report destination. I'll use the same one if we want to do the replication, and then save changes. So let's wait for a moment for the changes to be saved. Okay, and now we have our replication row that is currently running, and we need to hold on for a while for the replication to be done. So once the replication is done, we should be able to have our objects that are in the other S3 bucket. We should be able to have them inside here. But let's go ahead and upload some other objects into the S3 bucket here and wait for the replication rows to be done. So I'm heading back to this other bucket, and I want to upload maybe one more object. Let's upload, add files, select any of the files up, and then upload. Since you are done, let's close, go back to buckets. So let's go back to this other bucket and check. So we need to hold on for a couple more minutes for the replication to be done, so we can have our objects in this other bucket. So you can see now we already have the orientation.png. So you can see that we have this orientation.png, which is the object that we currently have inside here that we just uploaded, orientation.png. So now we have our AWS S3 cross region replication configured, and anytime we upload an object into this bucket, automatically is going to get replicated into the other bucket. So thank you very much guys for joining today, and join me in the next lecture where we are going to discuss about AWS Virtual Private Cloud, which is how to manage AWS virtual private networks. So I'll see you in the next lecture, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also leave a comment if you have any question. Bye bye.